Have you ever noticed how some people seem to bring out the best in you and others trigger something that you didn't even know was there? So those reactions, they're not random, they are energetic, and they're showing you exactly what your soul needs in order to grow. And it also tells you when it's ready to grow. So in this episode, we're unpacking what that really means through the lens of soul contracts. This is the unseen agreements that shape your relationships, patterns, and deepest lessons. So if you've ever felt stuck in repeating dynamics, if you are wondering why certain people feel magnetic but really, really draining, or if you're just craving peace after a relationship has run its course, this conversation is going to help you see through it all and see it from a different lens. So you'll learn how to recognize when an energetic contract is complete, how to unhook from someone without guilt or blame, and also how to move from a karmic attraction into conscious resonance. Because every single connection is an invitation. And once you understand the lesson and the dynamic, you can finally stop looping in pain and start living in clarity. So let's step into that awareness together.
You're listening to the Intuitive Mastery Podcast. Hi, I'm Connolly, and with over 15 years of intuitive healing and teaching experience, I'm here to help you celebrate intuition and value authenticity to create a world where you have the freedom to live your best life. This podcast is here to teach you how to apply the principles of spirituality, healing, and mindset to have true and lasting joy, all from the inside out. This is the Intuitive Mastery Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this podcast. I'm so excited to be here as always. And today I want to talk to you about this concept of soul contracts. Now, soul contracts are far and wide. We have them throughout our entire lives, and they pertain to almost every interaction that we have. So we call it a contract because it's not just about you. There's pretty much always another soul involved. And we come up with these contracts before we incarnate. Now, I just want to kind of take a little bit of a sidebar here and talk to you about this concept of deciding things before we incarnate. There is a lot of different experiences that we have as a human that have been predestined. And the predestined stuff still has free will and choice. But we usually have this thread of karma, dharma, soul alignment, what we're contracted here to learn that we are always going to be directed back to in our lives. We can make free will and choice about all sorts of things, but eventually our souls have contracts with other souls to spend time together, to learn from each other, to either be in a relationship or just have a very brief interaction. But whatever those contracts are, we will somehow usually find our way to them. But not only that, we usually have really big, important things to know and understand and learn about ourselves because of that interaction. Okay. So basically, it's looking at relationships like an energetic classroom. It is so important to kind of recognize that all of our relationships are here to teach us about ourselves. They're not necessarily here to bring happy, happy, joy, joy, although that is an amazing outcome and we can achieve that. But if we are here in a soul contract perspective rather than a destiny perspective, our relationships are likely to be here to teach us about our soul's growth rather than about bringing in a bit of fun. Okay. So all of these soul contracts are made before we incarnate, and ultimately we're going to have predestined things like our name, our birth, our parents, our family, our lessons, what we particularly want to embody and learn in this experience. And there are people who are born karma free. That's fantastic and incredible. The majority of people are not. The majority of people have some level of karmic imprinting, ancestral patterning, belief systems that are not serving them, that are showing up in their lives. And these will usually be reflected back to us through our soul contracted relationships. Okay. So basically, essentially, before we come into this world, we have a bit of a roundtable discussion with all of the different souls that we're supposed to learn from, right? And it's kind of like, well, hang on, I need to learn about self-love and boundaries. Who's going to help me, right? And then there's going to be another soul that goes, I need to learn about how to treat people well and, figure out how I'm going to work through my trauma, right? And we go, that could be a really great cat. Like, we could actually do that together. Do you want to do that together? And you go, yeah. My soul goes, you could teach me that. You could teach me self-love and boundaries. And their soul could go, oh, wow, you could really help me learn how to face my trauma. Let's do that. Let's do that. So we just write a contract and then we go, okay, cool. So we're going to learn this stuff together. We're going to figure this stuff out. And how about we have this meet cute? I'm going to make sure that I say this sentence and you're going to recognize me and I'm going to recognize you and we're going to go into that contract together. Okay, that's how it works. I mean, maybe not quite like that, but pretty close. So before we come in, we have these things predestined and there are meet cute cues. So as much as we don't believe in how we can kind of control certain aspects of our lives, we do actually have these soul recognition experiences. So that could be a particular location, that could be a word, that could be a look, that could be a touch. And these meet cute soul recognition experiences are there for us to go, wow, I need to know you. Like, you're going to be someone I need to have a relationship with. And when we have those experiences, it feels very magnetic. So sometimes it'll be like a magnetic kind of really beautiful feeling. Sometimes it's just going to be this pull, inexplicable pull, and you don't know why. Sometimes it's even friction, like, oh, wow, that person really irritates me and I don't know why. And usually what it's about is recognizing that those feelings, that pull, that trigger, whatever it is usually bigger than the actual life experience. So it'd be like walking after a first date and go, oh my goodness, this is the love of my life. This person has everything that I want. We are going to be perfect together forever. Now, you may have some intuitive hit around that, sure, but there's going to probably be other things at play if you're reaching that conclusion after date one, especially if you've never met them before date one, right? So it's going to be a situation where we need to understand and recognize that we have an intuitive pull and awareness around these things. And it's also important to understand, wow, I might have a soul contract with this person and there's stuff I need to learn about myself here. Now, the way that we can start to learn and understand this is by getting really curious. So the more aware of yourself you become as you grow up and you get older and you have various different relationships, is that you can pretty much always ask the questions. So when you first meet somebody, just check in. Does this person feel soul aligned to me? Does this person feel like I want to spend more, do I want to spend more time with them? I've got this really interesting kind of pull towards them, but what is that actually about? What do I need to know? What do I need to understand here? And I can usually, when I'm working on people, pull that out pretty quickly. It's pretty easy to kind of tune into other people around that. It's not always as easy to tune into myself, interestingly enough, but I think that's, just that proximity issue. But essentially, if we want to know when we meet someone, whether it's a soul contract or whether it's just a destiny connection. So a destiny connection is karma free. It feels really amazing. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that later, but that is different to this soul contract. And the soul contract can often have like a karmic energy to it, as in, I feel really drawn to this person. This person is my person. I feel amazing about this. But your soul is remembering. Your soul is going, oh, yeah, we had that conversation. So you and I need to play this out. Like, we actually need to, interact until you've learned love and boundaries, and they've loved they've learned how to kind of look at their trauma. Like, how about we play that out? And so it's going to feel like an intuitive choice. And on some level, it absolutely is. And intuitive choices in these circumstances do not always mean love, light, joy, flow, all of the things. Okay, it doesn't always mean that. But it very often means that it's sending us in our soul-aligned path, which is whatever that contract is designed to teach us, right? So in this case, let's say it's love and boundaries, self-love and boundaries, okay? Not that I've had those issues before. But anyway, we move on. So what you might feel with these people that you have karmic contracts with or soul contracts with, and is there a difference between karmic contract and soul contract? Soul contract is kind of like that connection that you have in between lives around, yeah, we've got to sort this out. We're going to really work on this. And I think a karmic contract is really, it's a similar thing. But I don't know that a karmic contract is necessarily as preordained. I think a karmic contract can be, it's literally a reflection of what you need to learn about yourself. So as you enter an interaction with somebody or enter a relationship with somebody, if you have had experiences with that soul before in previous lifetimes and you have interlocking karma around certain things, then that can be a karmic contract that you're working on. So let's say that soul and I that have been sitting on that across that round table, and we go, hey, we need to work on this stuff. And oh, by the way, we've actually been in this dynamic 4 or 5 times already. We've actually played this out in previous lifetimes. We've got a bit of karma associated with that together. Should we do that at the same time? Yeah, look, we may as well just tick the boxes. A big box ticker. Let's just do that, right? Let's just have this interaction in this lifetime where not only are we learning the lessons of our soul, but we're also undoing karmic ties that we have put together in previous lifetimes where we've had a similar dynamic and things have gone bad. Okay. So this is such a fascinating experience, because then you've got like a double whammy. And those relationships, by the way, are a little bit more difficult to work through and to come into a destiny place and or end, because you've got not just the lessons that you need to learn, but you've also got previous karma. Now, some people think they're the same thing. I think there's a difference. So karma is where you've played this out before, or you've played out certain dynamics before with this soul that need to be cleared up. And they can feel very, very difficult to shift. I'm not going to lie. They can feel extremely hard. However, the key point in here is clarity. If you become aware that you're in a dynamic that is draining, or if it's a pattern that you just can't shake, if there's this conversation on repeat, excuse me, that doesn't seem to shift, then absolutely this might be something to look at from a karmic or a soul contract perspective. And we can absolutely heal that and move through it and stop being triggered by things all the time. This is like the basis and foundation of my work, is to help people recognize the belief systems and the contracts and the karma that's creating the dysfunction, so that we can actually heal that and integrate that into your soul, so that you do not have to keep playing this out. You can end the soul contract. You can clear the karma. You do not have to be stuck with that at all, ever. It's just got to do with awareness and the willingness to see it and the willingness to heal it and change. And as long as you have those 3, you're good to go. You can actually clear this stuff at any point. Okay, so I just want to make that really clear. This is not something that you go, oh, well, I'm stuck with this human. I'm stuck with this really horrible dynamic. There's nothing I can do about it. This person, this soul and I, we decided that we were going to kind of, work this out together. And you can, but the only responsibility you have in that interaction is dealing with yourself. It's not dealing with them at all. Okay. So they're there to teach you about you. You're there to teach them about them. And if I choose to heal and they don't, that's fine. Okay. If they choose to heal and I don't, also fine. Okay. There's no mandated, you must learn this, because we have free will and choice. However, if we don't, and we pop off and we get to the other side and we look back on our life and we have a conversation with that soul and we go, oh, damn, I was supposed to learn about self-love, wasn't I? And they go, yeah. I'm like, oh, crap. I was also supposed to learn about boundaries, wasn't I? And they go, yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, damn, I'm going to have to go back and do it again. You know, like, why? Why don't we just learn? Why don't we just do it now? Why don't we just go, okay, we have this interaction. It's not serving either of us. I'm bringing up your trauma. You're bringing up my lack of worth. You're making me feel like my boundaries don't matter. I'm losing self-love because I'm constantly rescuing you. You're constantly in your trauma, but you're refusing to look at it. This is a mess. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? Like, do you just give up and go, whatever, I'll just deal with it? Or do you go, hang on, all right, I think my soul's talking to me. I think the universe is poking me and telling me that I need to do something different. How about I don't know, get curious and interested and choose to stop that dynamic? Like, why don't I do something about it? And sometimes the doing something about it feels like the hardest part of it, because I know people that have been in healing for years and don't seem to have moved through it. But there's an extreme here. So basically you can either do nothing or you can overheal to the point where all you're doing is looking for bad stuff. But there's a really sweet middle spot, which is I notice that this part of my relationship dynamic does not serve me. I tend to get, scared and worried when they're moody and going into their trauma. I'm really struggling and scared about holding boundaries because I'm afraid about how they're going to react. I don't really love myself enough anyway to put that boundary in place, because if I do and they leave me, I am going to be devastated and I'm not going to cope, right? So these are the questions and these are the things that we go through and these thought processes that we have that actually stop us from doing anything about what we're actually here to learn about ourselves. And it can get really, really scary when we go, gosh, I don't know how to deal with this. And so we start the healing process. But the trick is, and the gift is understanding when it's done, recognizing and having discernment of, oh, I'm no longer pulled in by this dynamic anymore. I can either graduate completely and try this relationship without the same triggers, or I'm going to need to recognize that actually that's the end of this relationship and I need to end it or leave or whatever, right? Now, remembering that when we hit that sweet spot, there's usually a recognition from both of the souls. Okay, this is the ending of the soul contract where we go, oh, I no longer get triggered. I no longer feel like I have to rescue and lose my sense of self-love when they go into their trauma. I'm actually not triggered by that anymore. I'm not pulled into it. I don't feel I need to rescue. I don't feel like there's something wrong with me unless I break all of my own boundaries to make them feel better. And they're equally going, oh, wow, I can see that, my trauma isn't bringing up stuff for them. I don't really feel like I need to pull them into where I'm at. I can actually self-process. I can actually work through my own stuff. And so there's this soul recognition at some point where you're no longer pulled into the dynamic. You have this kind of awareness, and how that shows up practically is where at the very beginning of the relationship, you've got this meet cute, you've got this pull, you've got this magnetism, you've got this, I can't seem to get out of this dynamic. Then sometimes there's recognition that it isn't working, but very frequently you don't know that it isn't working. So it is just really interesting to kind of feel and see that. But then you've also, once you've worked through and done the sweet spot amount of healing, that's when the magnetism stops. right? And you don't feel pulled into the dynamic anymore, right? So that is that beautiful kind of awareness of, oh, yeah, that's cool. You know, what I was just describing before. Like, I don't actually need to be pulled into that. I don't need to rescue anymore. I actually have a decent amount of self-love. So what they said was a little bit hurtful. Rather than trying to make them feel better because they're in a bad place and there was a reason for them being cruel, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to look after me. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to love myself through this interaction. And I'm going to place a boundary around that behavior because that's not okay anymore. And when I've reached that point, ding, 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 contract's done, right? We go tick, I've done that, I've learned that, I've been there. I can change this. Now, what happens after that? Okay, what happens from the relationship perspective? There's two different things. So we've done the energetic stuff, we've done our healing, we've looked at our karma, we've looked at our soul contracts, we've looked at what we're here to learn, we've integrated it, we're starting to hold those boundaries, we're starting to hold self-love, we're starting to really see how important that is. We are more neutral. We are not being pulled into arguments. We're not being pulled into their traumatic drama. Like, we're not pulled into it anymore. We feel neutral. So then comes the action. Now, if you're in an intimate relationship and this soul contract has ended, the relationship doesn't have to end. It doesn't have to. However, massive caveat here. If you are still feeling drained by them, you're not feeling magnetically pulled to fix it, you're not in a place of absolute emotional entanglement, you're not going into massive reactive patterns of behavior, but you can still see how much more draining they are than where you're currently at. If you're noticing that the relationship and the dynamic doesn't serve you anymore, that is a really big invitation to consider your options, okay? And sometimes, very, very often, in fact, when you do the healing and when you sit in that sweet spot of having done enough healing and you feel really good and you're not getting caught up in the drama and you're not getting caught up in your wounding, but you feel neutral and you feel good about things, then that other person, there's going to be two things that happen. They either step up and shapeshift through their stuff as well, or they very frequently just effortlessly fall away. It's usually one of those two things. If that doesn't happen and you're still in relationship, but you feel like that contract is over, number one, you can ask your intuition and figure that out. But also one of the things that you can do is recognize and realize that love doesn't mean that you have to stay. You can love yourself enough to go, I love you. This dynamic does not work for me anymore, and I'm going to step away from this, whether it's, temporarily or permanently, and that's really up to you at that point. So just having that really interesting kind of energetic all the way through to the practical, it is a really powerful experience, but it can also be really scary. And a lot of what happens is that we go, oh, I'm out of the dynamic, so it's somewhat more comfortable for me. And I'm going to choose to stay because it's more comfortable, not because it's in my soul's highest good. And that's when sometimes we can fall back into the patterns of behavior and then we can redo that loop. Okay. Then it becomes a bit of a karmic loop, and that can be even more difficult to get out of. So knowing when to call it, or knowing when to kind of recognize that the contract is done and then redefine your relationship, that stuff is quite important. So like I said to you, we know it's done because the emotional charge fades, okay? You can see the lesson and not feel the pain, okay? The other thing which is really important is that you no longer need the other person to change in order to feel peace, okay? Really important key step. Another sign is that you're kind of, the conversation feels like you're repeating an old script, but nothing's evolving. You're not getting triggered, but you're also not being, it's not changing. So nothing's actually shifting on that front. you may still have that kind of grief or sadness, but there's going to be this subtle inner click of neutrality. And that neutrality usually means that pull, that contract is no longer requiring you to be in that dynamic, okay? Your intuition can also tell you as well. And as much as the soul contract can somewhat overtake and kind of look like intuition, because it can, we can still always ask the question, right? Do I have a soul contract with this person? What do I need to learn? What do I need to understand? And how do I integrate that? Now, that is a free will and choice set of questions you can ask. I want to heal it. I want to move on. I want to do it now. And you can, okay? So when we have this relationship and we're struggling with this concept of interaction and we don't really understand what's going on, I just want you to have a look at this concept of projection and reflection, okay? So projection is when your unconscious energy leaks outwards, and reflection is when, the light is coming back to you and reminding you of who you really are. Okay, so the projection is usually unhealed stuff. You might find yourself judging or blaming or feeling overwhelmed by someone's traits, but they are always going to be a wound that's sitting inside of you. So once everything is healed, that should no longer happen. There should be very little or zero of that happening. And if it's still happening, there still might be something that you need to do within yourself, okay? You're going to have more defensiveness. You're going to have like a bit of a wall energetically between you and the other person. And it's usually because something's unhealed. And again, we get curious, we learn about it, we heal it, and then we decide what we want to do after that. Okay? The reflection is where you actually have this really beautiful admiration or respect or this sense of grace around somebody, and what you're seeing is this reflection back to you. There's parts of them that are reflected back to you, and it makes you feel amazing. Now, ideally, what we want to be seeing in relationships is a lot less projection and a lot more reflection. All right, and reflection not from a karmic sense, and not reflection from a personality trait issue sense, but reflection from a soul's perfection sense. Which is what we want to see. And they just keep bringing you back into awareness. Both projection and reflection bring you back to awareness, okay? What is being shown in me right now? What do I need to learn about myself right now? Is this person a healthy influence on me? So even though I've healed and I'm sitting in that beautiful space, this person is still someone that drains me. I don't feel right in their presence. And I know now that I deserve more. And that's when you can pretty much always know that the contract is done. So when that happens, what do? Like I said, you can try and make it work and redefine the relationship within it, or you can choose to step away. And that becomes a much more intuitive decision when you have finished that contract, okay? And like I said, if you have karmic imprinting with that person, that's also just another level of healing that's required. And then when you've done that, you have the choice and the possibility and the free will and choice to stay and redefine or to leave. And there's always free will and choice with that. Okay, I think that's pretty much all of it. I know it's a lot of information. Hopefully it's not too confusing, but ultimately just breaking it right down. We are going to have contracts with people. We are going to have soul contracts left, right, and center in our lives. We usually have a recognition when they're coming. We pretty much always know. There's this like, oh my gosh, I've known you before. Like, I know you. We have this instant rapport. Or I have this magnetic pull to you. Or wow, I'm deeply triggered by you. So these massive emotional responses to people is usually a sign that we've got karma or contracts involved. Okay. So then when we enter relationship, our job as a human is to have our soul remind us about what we need to learn and understand about this particular person and interaction. They are only signposts for our soul's growth. They are not bad people. 99% of the time. They are not trying to ruin your life most of the time, but what they are doing is reflecting back to you your own wounds. And I, of all people, who've had so much reflected back to me, am not saying this to make you feel bad. This is just how it is. And I wish it wasn't, but that is true. But the thing is, we always have a choice here. We have a choice to heal what's coming up in us, the emotional overreactivity, the patterns of behavior that don't serve us, the dysfunctional kind of dynamics that are occurring, especially if kids are involved. It can get really messy. And we can learn to heal it. We can learn to recognize it, become aware of where we're dysfunctioning, understand the belief systems behind it. And we just have to ask ourselves questions to understand this. And usually the interactions will teach us, or therapists or healers or whoever you feel safe with can teach you what that is. And so your soul will recognize, wow, this is about self-love and boundaries. Okay, this is self-love and boundaries. How do I learn that, get healing done, get energetic work done, and then figure out how to practically show up in that way? And then once you've learned that, bang, contract ended. You are no longer magnetically pulled to that person. You are no longer deeply triggered by the same things that deeply triggered you before. You are no longer stuck in this process of repeating patterns of unconscious behavior. You can see it for what it is. You're kind of out of that power dynamic. And then you have a choice. If both of you are doing your internal work and both of your contracts are cleared and you see a path to have this beautiful destiny-based relationship, that's amazing. And you can, relationships are dynamic anyway, but you can evolve a relationship into something that's really destiny based, and it can feel amazing. And the difference between the contract kind of energy and that destiny based energy is that destiny does not feel like a magnetic pull, right? It feels deep, but it feels calm and it feels safe. It feels loving, but it doesn't feel polarizing or dramatic or painful or overly kind of uncomfortable. It just feels peaceful. There's this peace and this calm and this depth, but you're not in this place of constantly needing to be pulled. And this is where we can often think that our contracts are ended because we don't have that magnetic pull. And if we're used to having that, it can be incredibly difficult to undo that. We have to learn how to be quiet with ourselves. We have to learn how to be in a place of peace without drama and trauma and pain and arguments. We need to learn that within ourselves so that we can redefine or then recreate new relationships without that dynamic. So that's like a whole other thing, right? But once we learn that, and once we realize that we can have a peaceful based, healthy dynamic, you can redefine that relationship and turn it into a destiny space. Or if you're the only one that's done the growth and the other person hasn't, and it's untenable for you, you usually then, once the contracts are ended, there's usually so much more clarity about being able to leave, about the fact that you could leave, should leave, can leave, will leave, right? You usually have this intuitive hit that's like, wow, thank goodness that's done. Let me go now, right? And that clarity is a sure sign that that is finished. And sometimes that's a catalyst for someone to change, but honestly, it's usually a little bit too late at that point. And then you choose to leave. But then what happens is that because that soul contract is done, and if there's karma involved as well, you're also clearing and healing really deep belief patterns, right? And that means that the person that you attract next will be different. Now, you can end a relationship before the soul contract is done. Yes, you can. You can absolutely do anything you want. You have free will and choice. You are a human. You can do whatever you want, basically. But if you decide to end that soul contract with somebody, I can absolutely bet you, absolutely 100%, that at that round table discussion that you had before you incarnated, there's going to be someone else who goes, hang on, if they don't manage to teach you, I'll do it. And then there'll be a third and a fourth. So if you do not learn what you need to learn in that soul contract, you will attract more. It'll come back to you. And I just wanted just a little bit of a warning. If you choose not to learn about yourself, there will be a second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 100th person at that round table that'll go, hang on, if you don't learn it from them, I'll show up. If you don't learn it from them, I'll show up. And then you'll just have this repeated pattern in relationships. So word to the wise, try not to repeat it a billion times with a billion different people. Recognize in the first or second relationship that you have, ideally, with this particular dynamic, and I'm using the example of no boundaries, no self-love, this is something that you need to learn about you. So the sooner and quicker that you learn about this and the more you embody it and you really kind of get the depth of understanding of what that looks and feels like, the sooner you can end that contract, the sooner you can move on to something that is actually soul aligned for you, something that will bring a destiny-based joy and love into your life. Okay, I've talked so long. I hope that's really helpful. I want to send lots and lots of love to you. If you are stuck in one of these relationships and you want a little bit more clarity, I do offer sessions, but I also have my Intuitive Mastery School where we learn all about how to become energetically sovereign, how we learn how to clear patterns of, karmic imprinting and sabotaging and belief systems and all of those things that keep you stuck in those dynamics. So if you want to learn more, just click on the link below. And I hope this was really helpful. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you next time.